Welcome everybody to the final AE and AM individual contributor sales confidence event of 2022. I'm really excited today that I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Charles Tristram from Auxano. Auxano are the leading go-to-market recruiter in the UK, and I'll let Charles introduce himself shortly. Before I do, I just want to make sure that you can all see and hear us. So can you just add into the comments, that you're live, and let us know where you're dialing in from. So not just London, what part of London? Where are you? Kensington, Hackney, Croydon, wherever you might be, let us know in the comments. And I look forward to you joining and enjoying this event. So once I start to see a couple of comments through, we will continue the opening. So just to give you a rundown today of this event, if you haven't been before. Hi, Oliver. Hi, Vitali. Thanks for being here. Hi, Harry. Good to see you. Stuart, welcome. Great. The comments are coming in, so we know we're live. So the format of this event, if you haven't been to a sales confidence event before, our vision is to build the world's most valuable B2B sales community and help you at each stage of your career with your mindset, well-being, and performance. And what we're ultimately looking to do is provide thought leadership, nuggets from top speakers in a condensed format. So each of the speakers that we've lined up today are going to be given 7 minutes where they can deliver some expertise, some tactics, some tips, some insights, some guidelines that you can work with and take away. Once each of the 7-minute speakers have gone through, we will then have a panel where you will be able to interact and ask questions. Also, I'm very excited that we are also going to be announcing the top 50 individual contributors in the UK today. And then once that's done, you'll be able to go and network with each other at the end. There's a little networking button on the right. So looking forward to kicking this off and having you join us. Charles, lovely for you to be here today. Thank you for co-hosting.
Thanks for having me.
A little bit of an intro of who you are, what you're focused on, and why you're excited about today's event.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me again, mate. I'm just going to jump straight in with why I'm excited to be here. First and foremost, to listen to the great lineup and speakers that you've pulled together, but also to see who ranks out in that top 50 list. It's always something that's created quite a buzz in the sales confidence ecosystem as such. But then coming back to probably the more boring part, which is about me, I am a recruiter by trade. I run and have founded Auxano, and what we do is we build go-to-market teams for some of the hottest and fastest growing hyper-growth scale-ups within the software world.
Love it. So if you're looking for a new opportunity, Charles is definitely the person to speak to. So LinkedIn and get in his DMs. This event wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. And so just to highlight them, shout out to Salesloft, Varison, Gong, Zoominfo, Venetrix, Drift, Auxano, Vidyard, Sixth Sense, Allego, Air, Cognism, Sales Psyche, Get Accept, Jiminy, Big Tin Can. If you use any of these platforms, just comment their name in the comments. I'd love to hear which platforms that you use in your sales organization. But as I said, let's kick off today's first speaker. I'm really excited about this one because I've watched his journey moving through early stage startups. So the first speaker we're going to invite up today is Jacob Prime, who is the sales team lead at Metomic. He's going to be talking about the proof of concept and maximizing your chance of success. Jacob spent over 5 years in software sales, having held roles with companies including Clevio and Egress Software, before joining Metomic in his current role at the beginning of 2021. So let's invite Jacob up to the stream. Hi, Jacob.
Hey, James.
We can see you and we can hear you.
Awesome. Great to be here, everyone. As James said, I've been the first sale hire at 2 startups which means I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to sell a product with no marketing, sometimes no customers, no brand. And often businesses that I sell to aren't aware that they have a problem yet. So proof of concepts and trials have been a really effective way for me to help them see that problem and help them see the value in solving that. So today I'm going to talk through some of the things that I've learned along the way. To me, I've boiled this down to 4 things: success criteria, who can say no in a proof of concept, having isolated conversations throughout them, and not underestimating training for a short proof of concept. It's really important and often gets overlooked. So if we start with success criteria, there's 3 points really I want to touch on. So firstly, what makes good success criteria? Now, for me, this is the single most important thing in any POC. It often takes 10 or 15 minutes in one meeting out of maybe 20 that you've had with a prospect. But it should be so black and white as to whether at the end of the POC it has been a success or not. No grayness to it. And that really allows you to kind of isolate the technical part and those requirements from the rest of the deal. So once the POC is finished, we don't have to be talking about the features and the requirements or the benefits of that anymore. So make sure your customers are writing it in their own words, not yours. Try and make it measurable. If we think about Cognizant, Zoominfo, and trying to purchase and run trials of those software, we might want to say, I want to find more email addresses in the US. That's okay, but we can make that a lot better. And we might want to say, I want to find 200 emails for these accounts of brand new contacts that I can't find email addresses in, or of these accounts where I don't have their email, I want to fulfill 80% of them with fresh contact information. So we can really ask follow-up questions and make it far more measurable of that. And then make sure it's assigned to a stakeholder. You probably have 4, 5, 6 stakeholders in your deal. Tag them with each success criteria so you know who did it, why it's important to them. Make it collaborative. A really easy way to do this is to share your screen like I'm doing now, get a table up, get a document up, and flesh it out together in a group. You'll find people will naturally collaborate, they'll put their opinions forward, and it allows you to easily track who's not said something as well. And then close with certainty. There's 2 questions I like to ask at the end. The first one checks if someone's missing. So we might say, Mr. Customer, we've got some great success criteria here. One thing I was thinking is there anyone from the business that hasn't had a chance to input into this document that you think would be important to? And we can then check if someone's missing. The second question is, have we got any criteria missing? So, Mr. Customer, if we were to completely put price aside and the platform delivered on everything that we've written on this table, is there any reason why you wouldn't purchase our solution? Purely from a functionality point of view. So we're isolating the price, we're focusing just on the technical and the functionality, and that will get them thinking and pause after that question so they can come back with anything that's worrying. Who can say no? So often in sales, we focus so much on who can say yes. Are they the decision maker? Do they have enough power in finance? Are they the economic buyer? In a POC, the person who says no will trip you up. If you actually think about this, often the people involved in our proof of concepts are junior or entry level roles. And I've had a really, really poor situation in the past where we were about to move to the legal process. The decision maker had said yes, but then it was actually an assessor who came up and said, no, this doesn't work for me. Similar to like an SDR and Zoominfo, if we're not able to find those contacts or in Cognizant, they have the power to actually say no. So make sure you focus on that. Having isolated conversations, which sounds unusual, but you want to speak with your stakeholders on a one-to-one basis as well as in a group. So firstly, this enables you to kind of risk mitigate on the deal. You can find out if someone's unhappy, if they have additional requirements, if there's a problem or a bug with their account. We've all experienced this. So you can isolate that off and find out on a one-to-one basis. On the flip side, you're able to highlight your successes. So you can find out some great use cases and then really dig into why that's been successful with the person, and then air that in a room with more people in there to kind of show that success. And then finally, it allows you to unearth more information. If we all think about having our champion either on the phone, on a meeting, in a one-to-one, they're going to give a lot more information to you. They're going to help you provide ROI, see like talk to you about the paper process or the buying process, whatever it might be. So you can really get a lot more information out of people when you speak to them on a one-to-one basis as well. So really recommend having these going on, whether it's on Slack, on the mobile phone, or in meetings throughout you running your proof of concept. And then finally, don't underestimate training. You probably had a demo 2 weeks ago, a month ago, and this is not, even though you like to think it is, probably not the most important thing in this person's job of buying this piece of software from you. Especially if you have legal or due diligence work like I do with my POCs, that can add months to the sales cycle. So you want to make sure that they remember what the software does. And a great way to do this is getting them to share their screen when they have their account and you walking them through the demo process with them clicking around. It's really important and amazing how many people will have forgotten to do this, and it definitely shouldn't be overlooked. And it allows you to guide them to the features that you know are going to maximize their ROI, or you know that are going to satisfy their success criteria. One really great thing as well is to put sessions in at the start. So often POCs will have a kickoff call on your agenda item. Put into book in training sessions or book in collaborative meetings, whatever you want to call it, and then schedule them in with the various stakeholders. So you know they're getting training, that you know how to use the product. Most importantly, you can find out more stuff about them as well, and if anything's gone wrong. So to recap, I think probably I've overrun, but success criteria is really important in making the deal black and white as to whether it's been successful. Who can say no? Don't get tricked up by any nasty surprises. Have those isolated conversations with all your stakeholders, and don't forget to tell them how the product works, else they won't be able to get value from it. I think that's everything, James.
Very nice. I think this is like an area, especially in early stage businesses, that is so critical to getting more results, from the sales process.
Yeah.
So well structured, well articulated. I look forward to having you back on the panel.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
So thanks for that, Jacob. Next, we have Timea, who's an account executive at Breadwinner. She's going to be talking about building honest relationships with prospects, customers, and adapting to the current economic climate. Timea joined and actually made an unlikely jump from dance into SaaS at the end of 2019 when she joined Logic Monitor as an SDR. She's currently with Breadwinner since last year and has gone from strength to strength and is absolutely crushing it at the moment. So, James, if we can welcome her to the stage.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Charles. Let me just check that my mute button is unmuted and my camera's on. So hopefully everybody can hear me and see me. So really excited to be here today. My topic, kind of as Charles mentioned, is more broad and all about building honest relationships with your customers and your prospects. So as I kind of go through the points of what I want to talk about today, just think about applying it to pretty much anywhere in your sales cycle, any type of people that you might be speaking to, any seniority level, because it's something that you can apply to all of the parts, basically everything to do with your sale. So firstly, I'm sure that everybody who is attending this session is an incredible salesperson or maybe aspiring salesperson, and you could probably sell a car to a bird, for example. But what makes a superstar salesperson, from my experience and from what I've seen, is to have a solid reputation and an ever-growing network is just knowing how to build an honest relationship, build trust and mutual respect with your prospects through being transparent and having a genuine interest and care in their business needs right from the get-go. So I'm going to talk through a few tips on how you can achieve this, though bear in mind that a lot of it is to do with letting go of that kind of closing only mentality where all you're aiming for is the close, whether or not this is in the customer's best interest, and just kind of throwing any techniques and any I dare I say like manipulative techniques to get the customer to buy if it might actually not be the best thing for them. So especially in this current economic climate, hence why that's in my title, is that right now buyers are much more wary of their purchases overall, and vetting is quite a lot stricter from what I've seen, and from what a lot of salespeople are saying. So they're much more likely to evaluate multiple options, and to make sure that they make the right decision. So you want to stand out, because many products can be pretty comparable. Obviously, pretty much every product especially in the SaaS industry, has a competitor, but people ultimately buy from people. So just to summarize the points that I'm going to talk about, there's 5 in total. The first one is do your research. The second one is set a mutually beneficial agenda for all of your calls. Number 3, have a framework or structure for all calls, but especially this is around discoveries and demos. Number 4, if I'm not losing count, is always respond. And finally, if there isn't a fit, be honest about it and qualify out. So just to talk a little bit more about do your research. It seems really obvious, but sometimes it's very easily forgotten, or sometimes you just go through your day where you have a bunch of meetings and you'll do all of your emails, and then you're like, shoot, now I have to get on this meeting. I don't know exactly who I'm speaking to, what their role is. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to go on a call and wing it. So do your research, find out what their role is, what their role may entail, what that person is going to care about. A lot of the times you can kind of gauge this based off like their seniority level, like a financial analyst versus a CFO if you're selling to finance. They're ultimately going to end up being very different conversations. But also don't be afraid, like don't assume too much, and don't be afraid to continue the research as you go into the call and ask them how your solution or basically in relevance to your solution, what they would do on their day-to-day, and ultimately figure out what it is that they care about. So that's what you can focus on throughout the call. The second part of doing your research is actually doing a bit of personal research. There's no harm in finding something to relate on, whether it's a school they went to, whether it's a sport, whether it's pets, or anything that they mentioned. Like Charles mentioned on my LinkedIn, I mentioned that I went from dance into tech sales. And anytime somebody reaches out to me, and mentions that, I'm like, oh, wow, this person really cared to actually look at my profile. So it makes all the difference, and having that slight detour from like a business conversation, it just helps everybody to relax, both you and the person or people you're speaking to, and then the conversation flows a bit better from then on. So number 2 was about setting an agenda that's mutually beneficial. Now, I want to put an emphasis on mutually, and to do this on pretty much every call, because 1, it shows preparation, plain and simple. And secondly, you want to make sure that you find out what the prospect or what the customer wants to talk about as well, not only what you want to get out of the conversation, so you can both walk away learning something valuable, new, or useful. So whenever you have a proposed agenda, always say that at the beginning of the call, but make sure you are always asking the customer or prospect if there's anything they'd like to add, because ultimately every relationship, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's with your family or friends, it works 2 ways. So you want to make sure that everybody kind of gets to chip in equally to these conversations. Number 3, discovery calls and demos to have a framework or a structure. This is more of a do/don't. So do not have a script. I think there's nothing worse than going on a call with scripted questions or an actual script of a demo or a presentation where you're literally just reading, because what then happens psychologically is the prospect or customer might say something to you, but you're not actually actively listening to them because you're focused on what you're going to say next because you have this script. And if they go off script, then what do? Then you're kind of screwed. So it's very important, have a framework or a structure so you can keep on track and still cover everything that you plan to cover in the call. But just don't have it scripted, because it just comes across very unnatural, and a lot of buyers can see straight through that. Number 4, always respond. This one is also, again, pretty simple, but it's very easy to let emails kind of slip through. So never, ever leave an email or like a phone call or a voicemail from a prospect or customer unresponded to. Aim to get back to them within 24 hours where time permits. Because this kind of behavior is actually often mirrored. You'd probably notice. So don't be surprised if you experience delayed responses or ghosting from your prospect, if that's actually the same treatment that they've been receiving from you. And speaking of, I should actually take my advice here with my friends, because they typically have to wait about 3 business days at least to hear back from me. But this never happens with prospects, always up to 24 hours. Now, my final point, if they are not a good fit, be honest. And arguably one of the most important points, because I'll give a real life example of what happened to me quite recently. It was earlier this year. I had a prospect on a call. It was a discovery call. And as the call went on and I was asking the questions, even in my head, I was kind of learning like, okay, maybe this isn't actually the best fit. They have some needs that we could cover, but we would probably do a lot more than what they need. So ultimately, I just know that even if I was able to sign them as a customer, they probably wouldn't stay with us very long because it's just not a strong enough use case. And the customer was also realizing that, but he didn't realize that I agreed. So it wasn't until I said that I actually agree when he said that I actually don't think that this is going to be a good fit. I said, yes, I think the same thing. That's what I'm discovering. His exact words were, I'm actually very gutted that this can't help me because you've been really great. And if opportunities arise in the future where this will be a fit, I will definitely be in touch and recommend your solution to others. So just by basically being honest with the customer and not trying to sell something that would ultimately not help them in the way that they need, I've potentially opened up future opportunities. Like he said, if he moves on to a different company or recommends us to some of his like colleagues or friends or people he's met professionally, then it makes a really good reputation for me as a salesperson, but also for our business to not be known as a super pushy sales team. So to summarize, number one is do your research, both professionally and personally. Number two, set a mutually beneficial agenda. Number three, have a framework or structure for your discoveries and demos and pretty much any call where you can. Number four, always respond. And number five, if there isn't a fit, be honest about it and qualify out. With qualifying out though, one very important note, do not qualify out too early. Make sure that it genuinely is a qualified out opportunity and it's not just somebody who isn't quite understanding their pain. So still definitely do the due diligence and ask all the relevant questions. And that's it from me. I noticed James is on, so I'm probably over time.
No, all good. Thank you very much. Really valuable, well-structured tips as well. I think on qualification out, I mean, while it's a tough time in our pipelines right now, there's no point working opportunities that aren't going to produce revenue. So something really good to focus on. Look forward to having you back on the panel. So next up, we've got Harry Hudson, who is a current account executive at Salesloft. Harry's going to be talking about, the fact that all we do is sell software. So interesting on his perspectives on that. Harry came out of university, went straight into his original dream job, which was being a sports lecturer. Spent 4.5 years doing that before he then decided to move into recruitment. Spent 18 months doing recruitment, joined Salesloft as an SDR, is now a successful AE, and I'm looking forward to his perspective on what he's got to share today. So I'm going to invite you up, Harry. You're on.
Cheers. Thank you very much, James, for the introduction. And yeah, thank you for the previous chats as well. I've definitely been taking some notes down. But yeah, I guess my conversation today is going to be more around sort of, I guess, the mental battles around sales. I think we can all agree that sales is a job that has some like wonderful highs and then some pretty nasty lows as well. And there's an awful lot of stress that goes into that. I think particularly with just having moved from perhaps new quarter, we all know those sales reps that hit target and then at the end of the quarter they're in a real good place and then they come into work the next day and they're back down to zero. So kind of the conversation today will be around sort of how to gain a little perspective of what we do, and hopefully this conversation and listening to it can help you perhaps reduce some stress, increase your collaboration at work, hopefully enjoy the job more, which will ultimately allow you to increase your performance and hopefully take home more money. That's sort of the goal here. And I guess the biggest thing to remember is that all we actually do is sell software. And I know that's probably, I know it's a lot more complicated than that to be able to gain that perspective, but just some things from having conversations with, selling to salespeople every single day, sales leaders, VPs, CROs, people that have gone through this job for huge amount of time, and also observing top performers at Salesloft. Something that they all have is that perspective on how on life really, and how that we're not determined. Our overall performance isn't just who we are as a person. We don't need to carry that everywhere in life. And it's almost, if I look at some of the top performers at Salesloft, it's almost they have that ability to detach and and almost act like they don't care. And I've always wondered sort of how they can get to that point, because they obviously care about the performance and the revenue they're generating and things like this. But if I look at people like Misha, who's quite well known in the SaaS industry, he looks like he's focusing, he's building his own company and it has his own goals and objectives outside of Salesloft. And then I look at people like Jack Nico as well, who's gone on sabbatical or 6-9 months, for example, to travel around the world and achieve their lifelong goals that they've wanted to do. It's almost been that their superpower to be successful is having that care to take that step back and understand that there is more going on. And as salespeople, there is a lot more going on in our lives, and having that perspective of how important it is. And it's unlocking that ability allows them to detach and, in my opinion, increase their performance even more so. So just kind of what we've been doing at Salesloft within sort of our AE team, that is how can we gain as much perspective as possible on our lives in order to free us up. And something that I've been utilizing alongside my manager recently has been, we sat down and decided to have a conversation around, okay, well, what's the 3 most important things for me in order to be happy? And something that we did alongside our team as well was that for me personally, it was like make sure my family's in a good place. I'm spending a lot of time with my nearest and dearest, closest friends, etc. And then also I'm very active as well. And if these 3 key areas are being nurtured, looked after, and watered almost, then I'm always going to be in a pretty good place. And for others, it may be things like drawing, or it could be experience in life, like being able to go around traveling, booking in holidays. I look back at former managers that I used to have and leaders, is that they, at the end of every quarter, they'd always have a new holiday ready planned. They would always have something that they'd be working towards, and just offer them that goal to step back and realize there's more going on to life, and they're still able to achieve everything they want to, whether or not they hit their number. But what I'm seeing more and more is that these people that do hit their number routinely are always looking to sort of have that perspective of stepping back and understanding there's more going on in our life. And so how we build out this plan of when you have those 3 key reasons or 3 things, that determining factors that are going to make you happy, is, well, how often do you need to do them? How much time do you need to give them, and who needs to be involved in that? And then the next step is, how can work facilitate those? So for experiences, for example, how much do you need in order to go out and experience and enjoy the life that you're looking to do? And what do you need to do at work in order to achieve those goals? And making sort of work be our secondary facilitator, really, rather than we're still focusing on our key objectives there. And just tools and different ways that we include this into our work scheme here at Salesloft and my own personal goals. I build these into sort of my own one-to-ones that I have. So we sit down at the beginning of the week and go through probably the standard deal cycle. Okay, look at pipeline. Okay, now what's going to close this month? What's closing next month? What do you need from the team, etc. But then I'm always looking to put in these additional goals and making sure my manager actually is being held accountable to ensuring that I'm going to the gym 5 times or playing rugby as well. Making sure that my manager is holding me accountable to doing this in order to put me in the best possible position to be as successful as I possibly can. Because I know if I'm seeing my family, I know if I'm going out with my friends, and I know if I'm being active, then everything outside is in a good place, which makes me a better salesperson, so that when I do step into the call, I'm able to I'm going into a call in a much better mental place. I'm happier, which then allows me to make better decisions and ultimately look to close more revenue or qualify out at an earlier point. And I think sometimes when we don't have that perspective, like Timea was talking about earlier, and actually qualifying out, it can be really difficult because we're so obsessed with hitting that number that we need to do, is that we can sometimes cling on to bad pipeline. And again, I look at the top performers, they qualify out quicker than anyone, and it's because they have that perspective of, I don't need this in order to make myself happy, in order to hit my number. There'll be other things that will happen. And it's just being able to take that step back, understand like what actually does make me happy in life. Am I nurturing those? Am I seeing my family? For me, am I spending time with my best mates? And am I going and being active? And if I am doing those things, then I'll actually be happy regardless of my number, which is quite a pleasing place to be, to understand that this doesn't determine my happiness. And I think as salespeople, when we are in this level of stress, and we have our number goes back to 0 at the beginning of the month, at the beginning of the beginning of a quarter, it can almost be daunting to have to go and do that again. But being able to take that step back, I found has allowed me to sort of relax a little bit at work, chill out, and then when I go into these meetings, I'm in a much better place in order to be successful, and I'm a better salesperson, and ultimately a better person for my colleagues to be around as well. So just sort of to recap on that, being able to take that step back and understand that all we do is sell software, and it's not to belittle our jobs or anything like that, but we're not changing policy, and we're not saving lives daily. That actually, as long as I look after the 3 most important things that drive happiness in my life, then I'm going to be able to be a lot more successful in the day-to-day of my work, because I'm a happier, better person. And yeah, James, I think that's it. I think that was quicker as well than I was expecting, or Charles.
Thanks, Harry. I personally resonate with that, and it sits with a lot of conversations we're having internally and around goal setting and doing more. So I'd love to delve deeper into that later in the panel. So thank you for the talk, mate. Lots of valuable takeaways and lots of notes that have been made. Next, we have Anna, who is the sales training manager at Vita Mojo. Anna's title is 7 Skills You Need to Become a Sales Leader. A little bit about Anna is when she started her sales career back in 2017, she actually joined a business called Closer Still, and then went on to join TradeShift before moving into coaching. She's recently joined Vita Mojo in her current role, and she's implementing training for sales teams, having spent several years supporting clients as a certified coach. James, can we get Anna on stage?
Hi.
There we go.
Thank you for the introduction, Charles. As Charles said, over the last few years, I had the privilege to work a lot with closing salespeople and help them transition into leadership. And that's why I want to talk to you about 7 key leadership skills that will help you in your role as individual contributor, but also as you move on into leadership. Now, those skills, many of them are soft skills, so that might feel a bit intangible. So I also want to give you 1 action step for each one of those skills so you can actually start working on them today. The first skill is listening. And that might sound a bit basic, but I'm not talking about the kind of listening where, let's say, someone comes to you and says, oh, this prospect is so annoying. And then you're like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I've dealt with that kind of prospect before. And then the other person doesn't feel heard at all. I'm talking about the kind of listening where you say, it makes sense that this is a frustrating situation considering how much time and effort you put into this opportunity. So we actually want to make the other person feel heard. So my challenge for you today is that next time you have a conversation and you want to take over and talk about your side of things, just stop for a moment, be curious, and ask an open-ended question to get a bit more information out of them. The second skill is motivating others. And that's what a lot of managers get very wrong. We are all motivated by different things. So someone might be motivated by money, another person might be motivated by flexibility or recognition. So it's very important that we figure out, both in sales conversations and when we are managing people, what motivates them. You can do that by practicing just identifying motivators in your team. So for example, today, you can sit down, think about each person on your team and ask yourself, what is the main motivator? And if you struggle to come up with the different motivators, because there are quite a few different ones, then I can also give you a list of all the different motivators just to help you with that. The next one is building trust. And that's an interesting one because it's essential in every sales cycle, yet many people struggle with it. And one of the reasons is that, let's say you trust yourself up to this level here. That means other people can only trust you up to the same level. If you work on the trust in yourself, other people can trust you as well. Otherwise, if you don't trust yourself and you try to build trust, that's the kinds of people where we are often a bit suspicious and we're like, there's something going on. I can't just tell what it is, but it's a bit fishy. So we want to make sure that we build that trust in ourselves, in our sales skills, and our leadership skills, so other people can have that trust in us too. How do we do that? There are a million different ways. I would say my favorite one is to just do the things that scare you. So if you're in a meeting and you're scared of speaking up, do it. If you think about going to a networking event, but the thought kind of makes you uncomfortable, do it. The more often you prove to yourself that you can actually do it, the more you will trust yourself. Then skill number 4 is consistency. And consistency is such a valuable skill because it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of people struggle with it. The reason why we struggle in the first place is because we set ourselves super big goals. I mean, think of New Year's where everyone is like, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to do a diet. And we're so motivated in the moment that we set ourselves goals that are way too high. If we want to show up consistently, we need to set smaller goals that we can actually achieve. So we have that moment where we can be proud of ourselves. So let's say, for example, you want to start waking up earlier, starting tomorrow. Don't change your alarm clock to an hour earlier. Change or wake up 5 minutes earlier, and then the day after 5 minutes earlier again. So you slowly work towards your goal. And then it's way more easy to really show up consistently. Skill number 5 is empathy. And empathy is a bit of a buzzword because it's been thrown around in social media a lot. What I mean with empathy is the commitment that I want to understand another person's world. I'm not talking about sympathy. I'm talking about being able to put yourself in their shoes and understand the world from their perspective. And that's important in a sales cycle. That's also important when we actually lead other people. So my challenge for you today will be, next time you face an objection, put yourself in your prospect shoes and really ask yourself, how are they seeing the situation and what are they thinking? Skill number 6 is actually a hard skill. It's analytical thinking. And sales numbers are so important. So we also have to learn how to interpret numbers the right way. We need to understand goals. We need to understand trends. The way you can practice that is, of course, you can take a course on that. There are quite a few. But you can also start looking at Salesforce reports and doing that on a weekly basis and really trying to interpret them and pull different data. That will really help you in the long run. And then skill number 7 is getting rid of your ego. And that is a big one. We often confuse ego with confidence, but confidence means that I know I will be fine no matter what challenge comes my way. Versus a big ego or showing up from a place of ego means I'm trying to compensate for a lack of something. Now, we all have been there. We all have an ego. It's fine. And we also all have met people who have a big ego, the kind of people that thrive on authority or the kind of people that steal someone else's recognition. If you find yourself in that situation, first, it's okay. But then stop for a moment and ask yourself, what is the feeling that I'm trying to create right now? And why am I not feeling it yet? When we come from a place of ego, there is something we want to feel, but we can't get it internally. So we're looking for external ways to get it. So to summarize again, there are 7 skills. The first one is listening. The second one is motivating others. The third one is building trust. Then we have consistency, empathy, analytical thinking, and getting rid of your ego.
Thank you very much, Anna. By the way, kudos to the background pick. It's probably one of the most interesting I've seen at one of our events. So thanks for placing yourself there.
I'll pass it on.
Smart move. It will look good on YouTube. Look forward to having you back on the panel momentarily. So we're up to our final speaker now. So one of the things that a lot of you have said to me over LinkedIn is like, James, okay, you know, I love being an AE, but the vision for me is leadership. And what steps do I need to take to become a leader? So we've already had from Anna some of those perspectives. And now we've got Ryan, who is Senior Manager of New Business Sales at Zoominfo. He's going to be talking about going from IC to leadership and how to prepare for the next step. Ryan joined Zoominfo in 2017 as an account executive before moving up through the company, got various promotions into his leadership role now. Zoominfo is a global leader in go-to-market intelligence solutions, providing B2B sales, marketing, recruitment professionals tools to allow them to hit their number. Ryan actually spoke at our conference in July and made a fantastic contribution. And he's having a lot of emphasis on how the future of sales is evolving and developing. and I'm really excited to have him back with us today. So Ryan, over to you. Do you want to share your screen?
I do. Thank you. Let me go ahead and do that. So share screen. All right. Can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Perfect. So to James's point, yes, today I'd love to talk to you guys kind of what to think about as an individual contributor today and what that step might look like in a leadership and really just how to prepare for that. So before we do get into it, quick safe harbor statement. Zoominfo is a publicly traded company. Just don't go making investments based on today's presentation. Now, with that out of the way, just a little bit about myself. So I'm actually based here in the States. I'm in Michigan. And to James's point, the reason why this was a near and dear topic for me is I've had the pleasure while working at Zoominfo to really make that transition. As James had mentioned, in 2017, I came in as an account executive. I did that at a high level. In 2018, I was able to be a team lead, which basically is your own quota, but with a couple people that you're coaching and you're developing. And then the next 3 years after that, I had the opportunity to lead teams of about 8 to 12 reps where I was helping develop, coach, and sell with those reps. And then in the beginning of this year, I took over a senior leadership role where now I cover all of Europe, Middle East, and Canada. And so that requires a lot of coffee for me because I'm waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning, talking to clients all over the world and just making sure that we're able to support them. And when I talk with reps, when I've talked to people on my team and I've helped people get promoted or make that transition to the next level, there's certain things that I always talk to them about and coach them on that I thought could be helpful for the greater team here. So I think the first thing that you really need to just consider is, does it make sense for you? And does going into this role align with your objectives, your goals, and your ambitions? And what I mean by that is, a lot of times I talk to people and they think, hey, going into leadership is the path I want. It's the only path I should go down. But I've had a lot of reps that wanted to stay rock star individual contributors. And some of the big reasons why you might stay in IC is the freedom, right? If you are a high performer, you probably get the opportunity of flexibility of when you come in, when you take off, what your schedule looks like based on your customers, how long of a vacation you take, because everything is around your number and your performance. And people love that freedom. Because a lot of what you do is tied to the business's revenue, you're also compensated for that. So oftentimes my highest performers are making more money than my management team as well. So the money's there. And then oftentimes I find that individual contributors like to have their own control. They want to be able to dictate how their sales process looks, how they do their follow-ups, how they present pricing, how they negotiate, whether it aligns maybe to the company structure or to their own. They want to have that control. And that's where it makes sense to probably stay as an IC and make that money and do the things you love. Now, if you're thinking about leadership, the 3 things that I typically see as really good signs that leadership might be right for you is you want to make a bigger impact. You have ideas, thoughts, things that can help make the business grow, develop, make it better. You want to help others level up their skills. You're producing at a high level in your current responsibility. You want others to get to that level and you want to help others achieve success. And then selfishly, you want to grow yourself. As an individual contributor, you might learn and master your role and responsibility, but you want to be able to challenge yourself and flex past what your skill set is, having difficult conversations, looking at making forecasts, understanding where to pivot your business, understanding where you might need to hire new people, let people go. Things around that are just different challenges than what you might face as an IC. Now, if that is something that you want to do, there is a path that you should take to get there. Number 1 is make it known early to your leadership team that this is something on your radar. And what I mean by that is, are you letting your leadership team know that this is on your career path and this is what you want? They're going to help you get there. Also, when new opportunities and expansions open up, they'll think of you versus maybe going externally. Once you've made it known, make a game plan with your manager. Hey, what does that action plan look like? What do I need to improve on to take that next step up into leadership? Have trackable KPIs to show, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is how I'm going to do it. And here's the timeline that I'm going to execute against this. And then make sure that you're checking down with your leadership team to pivot or make changes where it's needed. And then once this is all in place, you still need to execute and contribute at a very high level. A lot of times the peers amongst you today are going to be people that you might potentially lead one day. Build confidence with them as that you might be a great leader one day. Be a role model. When the company has new pricing, a new presentation deck, new talk tracks, a new product they're rolling out, be the first one to step up and take that initiative and try it. And again, level up others around you. At Zoominfo, we use Chorus and we share snippets all the time amongst our team on talk tracks, competitor conversations, how we're going for the close, to make sure that our team is scaling up as one. Now, some of those common first mistakes that I see when you do take that first step into leadership and things that you'll want to try to avoid. The biggest thing that I see is trying to do everything yourself, trying to be Superman, knowing that you could do it as an IC, but knowing that it might be different as a leader. Instead of you sending that email, making that call, doing this and doing that, teach your team how to fish. Help them be a bunch of you. Multiply yourself across your team so that everyone can continue leveling up. When joining that new team, don't make changes too quickly to the business. Sit back, understand what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what challenges is this team facing, where can I make a small pivot and see a large ROI on the back end. Make sure that you're meeting with your team on a consistent basis. I need to meet with my team on a weekly basis to understand what are the challenges and the headwinds they're facing? What are we hearing about competitors? What's the economic climate like? What's wrong with our platform and what can we improve so that I can go and eliminate those roadblocks for my team down the road? Know that your long-term goals are more important than your short-term goals as a leader. As an individual contributor, you might be able to pivot very quickly on a new talk track or how you do something in a demo. But when you're leading a larger team, it takes much more time to pivot that team and that strategy. So looking at things like data and understanding, hey, if this is where I want to be at this time, what changes do I need to make now to get my team there? And then lastly, just making sure that you're really allocating your time effectively. And what I mean by that is, my old leader used to say, if I spend 30 minutes with someone, I want to get a 2x ROI. So to spending 30 minutes on a closing call with your rep and helping them win a one-off deal give you a better ROI than spending 30 minutes with that rep, coaching them, helping them on closing tactics, and letting them go and run that for the next 5 sales calls that week. What's going to give you a bigger lift long term? So just being really protective with your time. So again, in summary, if you guys are thinking, hey, leadership might be for me, first, just make sure that those goals and ambitions align to what a leadership role actually looks like. If it does, build that path, work with your leadership, put together a game plan, and then execute against it. And then once you do move into that leadership role, don't make the mistakes of other leaders. We've already done it. We know how to be better about it. Multiply yourself, understand what your business is going through, strategize at a higher level, and make sure that you're managing your time effectively. So that's it. Appreciate the time, everyone, and back to James.
Thanks, Ryan. That was a great talk. I'm sure everybody took lots of actionable tips and food for thought, because even as a recruiter, we always hear account executives or even SDRs that say, I want to be a leader. And I probably have some questions in and around that for the panel, but it's definitely a topic that always comes up of everybody kind of thinks progression is leadership and leadership alone, right? So there's some really good things to think about there, which is awesome. Thank you very much, buddy.
My pleasure.
James, we're going to get some people.
Yeah, let's bring everybody up for the panel.
Perfect. Brilliant. So as we're starting to get everybody on stage for the panel, we've got one eye on the comments to be looking to see if anybody's got any questions. Naturally, I've got a bunch of questions. So guys, please feel free to put your own questions in there so that we can make sure that we're delivering the right topics for the actual audience, right? I think first and foremost, which is something that we don't often do when we host these panels, is to see if any of the speakers actually have questions off the back of the topics that were shared for each other first and foremost. Does anybody have any questions that you might want to ask each other?
I have a question for Ryan, because Ryan's topic is something I've been really interested in for quite a while. Ryan, I'm sure that throughout your experience in your role, you've also probably seen people grow similar to how you have from individual contributors to management. How often, or have you ever seen somebody make that leap and decide that it's actually not for them?
That's a great question. I think, I've had the ability at Zoominfo to promote a lot of people, and sometimes we promote them and realize that this role might not be the right role for them. The nice thing about Zoominfo is that we do reallocate our team where they're going to be successful. So I think, that is something where you would want to discuss it with your leadership. At the end of the day, we know you're a high performer. We know you can do the job that you're in, and that you're a valuable team member, a resource to the business. So oftentimes I think having that conversation with your leadership team and building out a plan of where you might need to go or to be the most successful is what you need to do. But I've had plenty of conversations where, they stepped into leadership, they thought it was right for them, they realized they like that freedom, they like the money, they like the control, and the IC role is better fit, because there is a lot of different challenges and pressure points as a leader that you might experience that you might not be aware of as well. So I find that most companies will help you kind of navigate where you need to go, as long as you have that honest conversation with them.
Yeah,
I 100% agree to that.
Can I add something to that? I love what you just said, Ryan. And what I find also in those situations, what is really important is that you're honest to yourself and that you allow yourself to admit that it's not for you. Because so often people who move into leadership and then feel like it's not for them, they feel that shame around it and they feel like a failure because they didn't make it work for them. But it's actually not failing. It's just you were brave enough to try something, and it's even more brave to admit that this is not for you.
Agreed. I think we talk to people as well to kind of add a little bit more on top of that, is that it's okay to fail. It's okay to make left turns. You're human, right? Sometimes it's how we learn. I'm a dad of 2 young little girls, and I watch them make mistakes on a daily basis. I don't scold them for it. I don't think of them any different. I love them all the same, right? I kind of treat my team with the same part. Although we have some tough questions and tough conversations, it's okay to get things wrong, because often that's how we learn the fastest, right? I'm sure everybody here has got some actionable hard learns that they've made in the last 3 to 5 years, let alone the first 3 to 6 months of joining this industry, right? It's one of those things that comes on. Harry, I really liked how you talked about goals. I think that, I'd probably make some transitions to like the sporting background and probably recruitment and things like that. You talked about goals and achievement and tying those into a couple of things that are important to yourself. Do you share those openly with a team, or do you save them for one-to-ones? Do you discuss goals publicly to be held accountable, or is that something that you keep to yourself and management, mate?
But what do you mean, like short term, or like what I actually like? The reason I come to, I openly talk about the reasons why I come to work. I come to work because I don't want to work. So what I mean by that is I want to get out of this as quickly as I possibly can, and the plan that I've got in my head to be able to do that, I will openly talk about with my team and things, and my manager and things like that. Yeah. So I think it's good. I think it's good when you start talking about what you want to focus on, people can just ask you how you're getting on with it, right? Yeah, definitely. I've put in, me and my manager have like a one-to-one doc, and then it goes like, how do you want me to support you this week? And I'm like, I just need you to ask me on Friday if I've been to the gym 4 times this week. So, those type of things, I know that's going to build into keeping me healthy and keeping me in a good state and things like that. So yeah, I don't know if we openly talk about like what we want to achieve like in the real long term, but I'd be very open to discussing that. But yeah, I definitely share with my manager and okay, cool, this is what I want to achieve this week. And it doesn't matter what it is, he'll follow up with me based on whether it's a work-related goal or if it's a personal outside.
I've got a lot of time for that. You're getting the support from your manager. One of the things that we maybe do slightly different is holding each other accountable in the room. So if we know that somebody wants to achieve something, and they can tie that in not just to individuals, but emotional gain, emotional benefit, and a number of different things, so that we're also making sure that somebody says, I'm going to hit the gym 5 times this week, we'll check in, we'll ask questions, we'll make sure that they're doing that. Or it could be something whether or not it's around targets, right? So yeah, it was always inquisitive, because different organizations, different individuals run their ship different, right? So I did want to ask that question. Timea, you mentioned about one of your top tips is to not have a script, but to have frameworks. Do you have tips for anybody in the audience that might feel like they're a little bit more script heavy, and how to build a successful framework, or like your top tips in and around frameworks that are getting you through your sales process? I don't know if we've got some lag.
I'm really sorry. Was that a question for me? Because I've just been freezing up for like the past 10 minutes and hearing robots. So
no worries. So yeah, I did. I had a question in around your comment for less
frameworks. I was like, I feel
and more
like this is for me, and I only heard one word of the whole question.
Yeah, sure. I think we've got bad connectivity, so I might switch over to somebody else and then see if we've got you back. But give me a little wave if you're ready for the next question and you've got us back good. It looks like you do. So I wanted to get your tips for the audience in and around creating frameworks that are helping you and perhaps your team right now, instead of utilizing the scripts that a lot of people maybe in the audience are using. And that will go open to everybody else as well if you've got tips on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I built, so I basically have a framework for every step of the sales cycle. This may or may not apply to other people's sales cycles because it depends on how complex it is, of course. But generally, I'd have like one for a demo, for a discovery, speaking to like decision maker, speaking to economic buyers, like different types of people in the sale. And honestly, the way that I built them is just through like practicing with my own team or like my management or like my CEO. I would do like a bunch of dry runs of different variations of scripts and just ask them to like put themselves in the shoes of the buyer and kind of help me throughout. And I do that kind of on a regular basis. So I try to keep updating them as well, because obviously times keep changing. The way that we sell keeps changing. The way buyers want to buy keeps changing. So it's important to like keep up with those trends as well. But I would say that's really it. Just make sure you practice and keep updating it. Like never have it super static.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Does anybody else have anything that they'd add as a layer on top of that for frameworks, or do we have anybody that's pro script on the panel?
Time and a place, probably, depending where you are on your career. But I think not scripts if they say this, you do this, or things like that. But yeah, probably when you are starting off, you can build your confidence from that. I know I found it useful, and then when you get a little bit more experience, you start to be the person that people aspire to be, right? Because they're going ad hoc, they're asking questions when you're like, that's not on my script or anything like that. But I think there's definitely a time and a place for them. But I think, yeah, when you transition into more complex sales cycles and things like this, it's kind of, yeah, perhaps not as useful.
I probably echo what Harry said. Like a lot of the things that I do with my new team is I give them a framework that I want to see them use and leverage for a couple of months that I know is successful. It makes it more predictable. It helps me understand what types of objections they might get, where the deal might go. And then as they start seeing success, begin to modify that, tweak it, make it your own, make it special to your personality and what you do. But I think having a general framework that you can work off of until you can do it, almost with your eyes closed, is something that I would recommend to most people as they still, build their fundamental skills.
Anybody else for any more? Because we see a lot of people utilizing, a lot of script frameworks. So the intros, it gets bounded around Connect and Sales 27 seconds that Jerry talks about quite a lot. We get that quite often. I get pitched even as a recruiter with it too. So I guess, it's kind of like the comfort blanket. So it's always a question of a time and a place. I do love that. We kind of build similar cool structures, frameworks, areas of which they need to break down ourselves. So curious to see, you guys' thoughts in and around that. There's a lot of people that are pro, there's some people that are anti, and then there's everything in between, right? So we obviously covered quite a lot in regards to the talks and topics. I feel like there was a general theme in and around holding yourself accountable, doing more outside of work than just being somebody that works. There's an element of failure. There's an element of knowing your why. There's lots in regards to leadership. I liked how we kind of finished in and around the leadership piece. I'd like to ask Ryan as well. At what point did you know that you wanted to become a leader? Because you talked about freedom, money, control, to be a rock star IC. Were those things that became less important to you, and you had that trigger moment? Were those slides built on your journey, or is that something else?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say for myself, it's something I've always wanted. But with that being said, I was fortunate enough to be one of the first few reps at Zoominfo, and even in my office, there was 4 white desks pushed against the wall. It was in a co-shared work environment. It didn't seem super official. So as that team became more successful and grew out, there was just a need for it. And for me, I found that moving up in the ladder and moving up quickly, I found that going where the business needs me and being open to exploring new things and pushing my boundaries and doing things I haven't tried before has gotten me to places I wanted to go a lot faster. Working the international market was not something on my radar to wake up at 4 a.m. every day, but it's built really good experience for me. I've had the opportunity of learning new cultures and new environments and things that I just haven't experienced before. So for me, it just kind of came out of a need, but it was something that I understood that I also wanted to help others and make people successful and really just coach, my skills and where I think I could add value to other people on my team.
I love that. I got a lot of time for that. I didn't realize I wanted to be a manager before I was a manager. And kind of just fell into it, right? I actually heard Henry talk at SaaSter, and you talked about international there. It was shocking to know that before you guys landed in EMEA, you had already hit 200 million ARR from the US in EMEA. And that was just a ridiculous stat. It's resonated with me. I'd say the second part from the conversations that resonated with me personally, fortunately, we don't have many comments coming in through or questions through the comments, or maybe it's my connectivity for that, was Jacob talking about who can say no. We're always focused on the yes. Even in recruitment, we're always expecting people to say yes, let alone SaaS. And the isolated conversations I related back to something that we talk about, which is champion time. Jacob, was that something that was kind of brand to you in your organization now, or is that something that you've picked up along your journey to not be fearful and to focus on who's going to say no?
Yeah, so I wish it was brought to me. It was actually from a really poor experience that had quite a significant impact, like a domino effect. So I'm constantly worried about the people who can say no, not yes now, not just in POCs, but throughout a whole deal cycle. I think one of the things that's really easy to do is have happy ears, and if your champion and your decision maker have said something, but this person kind of said some negative point or raised a question mark, it's kind of easy to like bat that away and just like brush it under the carpet and hope it doesn't get brought up again. So yeah, experience with that, and then I guess the isolated conversation parts. Like when I joined Metomic, the first customer we sold to was based on designs that looked like a working product. So I'm constantly battling with a buggy product way more than perhaps other people in larger sales companies. So being able to have like isolated conversations when the product hasn't worked very well with someone who's perhaps an assessor or quite junior hasn't derailed the proof of concept and has become somewhat a necessity, especially for early stage companies. So I've kind of seen other benefits come, but yeah, both of those have been from probably learning it the hard way rather than having someone come in and introduce them as concepts.
Perfect. I think that's like super fair. I think we just had one that's come in as well, so this can go out to the entire panel. But before I do so, yeah, Jacob, again, not to make this all I focused, because I know that we talked about, Anna talked about listening and not making it all about themselves from that. But with all of this, I want to try and share and add to the different experiences that we have in recruitment is that we're not looking for reasons to submit people into our vacancies and what we're working on. We're actually looking for reasons not to submit candidates. So, we're looking for reasons not to work with clients. We're looking for lots of different areas within that. We've just had a question come in from Joseph that said, what are the skills an SDR needs to develop to transition into an account executive? It's quite a common one that we see. So again, would love to get all of your insight to see what skills you guys believe is important for that development process.
I'm happy to kick off. I think normally for me, when I first moved into AE, I was fully self-generated, so I didn't have any SDRs feeding me business. So it was a double whammy, and you kind of have to make the most of the meetings you did have. And one thing that really helped me was getting good at discovery and being able to go really deep on discovery. And as an SDR, depending on how your business is set up, you might be quite high level with your questioning and be able to extract enough information to pass it on to the account executive, who then will do the funneling. But being able to get that deeper level of discovery, doing funneling, and this is something you can practice in your own life, just how deep on a conversation can you go with someone just by asking follow-up questions, or can you explain that a little bit more, or what do you mean by that? That's going to make you really good at getting that deep discovery, understanding if it is an op, and if not, qualifying it out and focusing your time on another prospect who is probably going to buy your software.
Awesome. Love that. Has anybody else got anything they'd add to that?
Just perhaps not necessarily on the skills part of it, but I think skills are just half the game of trying to get promoted from an SDR to an AE. And I think everyone's faced there. That's the reality of it. Like your number's your number. You need to be able to do that. You've got to do discovery, but then you also need to find out what's the decision-making process internally. Who, as Jacob said, who can say no to you? What do you need to do in order to get the yes there? And actually that I think, and I've never been a sales leader, but from my own experience, is that they want to see if I can run a deal cycle internally to get myself promoted almost. So identify who the key stakeholders are, put myself in the right position. So Joseph, it was, so the skills is only part of it. I think the next part is speaking to find the SDRs who have transitioned already to AEs and understand not necessarily what they did in order to get promoted, but how they did it and what was their plan going on in order to do it. Would be something that I would say to go and have a chat internally about.
Great
guys,
answer,
I'm just
Harry.
going to have to interject because we're just running over time a little bit, but I want to thank each of all the speakers. So if we can have a round of applause in the comments for the speakers' contributions today. Really valuable insights. All of this is recorded, will be uploaded to YouTube within 48 hours, and then I'm sure the speakers will share it amongst their networks. Thanks very much for being here. Thank you, Charles, for co-hosting. Now we're going to go into announcing the top 50 UK individual contributors, and then you guys can all head into the networking. So thanks again to the speakers. And Charles, let's go through this exciting list. So this is it. We do this once a year. We didn't do the top IC list in 2021. So we're back this year with a list of the top 50 ICs that you should follow. We take nominations. We take anecdotal data from the community. We read all the nominations. Then we take company growth data, and we've come up with this list. So let's go for the countdown. I'll start with 50, Charles, and then let's get it down to 1. So in 50th place, it's Mendici from Zen Cargo.
And then we have Luke Stegel at 49 from Cladara.
Zach from Zoominfo.
We've got Enik from Zoominfo as well.
We've got Zanif from Clavio.
Matthew from Salesloft.
Tess from LoopMe.
Holly from V7.
Parnell from Seismic.
And Kiara from OneTrust.
Freya from Paddle.
Aaron from Elation.
Charlotte from Soldo.
Ben from Leapwork.
Shanice at 36 from Omniplex.
Sam from Blue Optima.
William, 34.
Natalie from Zoominfo.
Cecilia from Big Tin Can.
Then we've got Vivek from Amazon Web Services.
And Jason at 30 from GitAccept.
Then we've got Miriam from Chaser.
Charlie Cowan from High Sport. If you haven't read his book on how to sell tech, check it out.
Vishal from Gong.
Peter from Elation.
Kelly from Hired.
Ivo from Sprinkler.
Ashley from Employment Hero.
And Harry's in there, one of our speakers from Salesloft. Congratulations.
Natalie from Zendesk.
Sophie from Cognism.
Rod from Braze.
Chris from Vidyard.
Stephen from Okta.
Jake from Sixth Sense.
Go on, Jake. Charlotte from WeGift.
Tommy from G2.
Loretta from Varicent.
Freddie from Jiminy.
Catherine from Samsara.
And then this is this year's top 10 individual contributors. Congratulations for everyone that's being featured. So at 10, we've got Jessica Green.
At 9, we've got Daniel from Jumio.
Timea, Breadwinner.
Mark in 7th at Constructor.
Jacob, who we had speak earlier, from Metomic.
At 5, we've got Pierce from Calibra.
Louise from Octopost.
At 3rd, we've got Luke from AppLearn.
And then 2nd place, Vicky from MongoDB.
And our number 1 individual contributor for 2022 is Martha from BetterUp.
Amazing. Well, congratulations to everyone that's been featured. If you haven't voted for an SDR in your team or your sales leader, the link will be out on LinkedIn this afternoon. So get voting. If you don't vote, you can't be in it to win it. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you, Charles, for hosting. Let's head into the networking, and we'll catch you all in LinkedIn soon. Take care.
Thanks, James. Thanks, everyone.